News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community, calling 447-261-1380. Get involved in the conversation. People passing politics on the Sunday afternoon. Attorney Robert Patillo, Chris Smith holding out on the ones and twos. We are still talking about the FBI raid and charges against the African People's Socialist Party. We're still talking to Omali Yeshitela about everything that is going on with the federal government and their attacks against this organization for simply advocating for reparations for the African American community. And Dr. Yeshitela, do you think this is meant to send a chilling message to those of us in the Pan-African community and movement? Do you think that this is the government letting people know that, well, if you get out there and really start fighting for and organizing for and pushing towards reparations, not just talking about it, not just marching and singing, but really organizing around it, that this is what will happen to you? Do you think that's the message the government is trying to send?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point that you're making. Because once you start going beyond begging for it and actually organizing to make it happen, to win masses of African people to take on this question of reparations, I think is a critical contradiction that this government is faced with. And I think that's especially true for the Biden administration, which, engaged in a host of criminal endeavors internationally and inside this country. And of course, the Biden administration that was opposed to things like busing, opposed to the Civil Rights Bill, who made the statement that he was opposed to integration because he didn't want his children to have to go to school to, I forgot what he called it, some kind of jungle,
racial
something.
jungle.
I forgot exactly how to characterize. So yeah, and I think you have the Biden administration also having, in the face of acts it's involved in, including Ukraine, including Palestine right now, including presiding over things like the government that upped the bounty on the head of Assad Shakur. He's running around talking about how there's great contest is happening in the world between democracies and autocracies. And, of course, the U.S., he's pointing the finger at the United States as being the headquarters of democracy in the world. And on the one hand, but on the other hand, the reparations demand is one that requires an examination of the history of this relationship that exists between black people in this country and the United States government. It reminds people that African people in this country are the only people other than the indigenous people who did not come here looking for a better way of life, but lost one as a consequence of being here, and that we came here at gunpoint. So I think that's a really telling thing in this contest that the United States is involved in attempting to hold on to his hegemonic role in the world as the great beacon of democracy and what have you, for black people to be running around organizing around the question of reparations. And there are people who have done and are continuing to do incredibly important work around that question. And we have been in the forefront of that issue for a long time, having determined a long time ago, even at a time where people were doing certain kinds of reparation work, but masses of people were not involved in it. We organized the first tribunal on reparations for black people in this country, where we had international judges come into Brooklyn, New York in 1982, and we hosted these tribunals for something like 11 consecutive years in different places throughout this country. So we pushed that reparations issue. We made it something, and other people have taken up the reparations call. And I just wanted to mention, too, that you mentioned Tucker Carlson. And it's really interesting that Tucker Carlson, Tucker Carlson had done 2 shows on this case. Our case, the Uhuru 3, the attack on the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement, condemning this attack as an assault on free speech. He had done that 2 shows and was fired something like a day or 2 after that. A week prior to that, he had done a speech at the Heritage Foundation, I think it was, where he lambasted this determination, this attack on us as an assault on free speech. Since that time, Glenn Greenwald, even Glenn Beck, all of these people, some of these, Carson and Beck, according to the common narrative, supposed to be right-wing, fascist-type folk, etc., but they came out against this because of what it meant in terms of free speech. And I agree with you. The thing that Carlson just did that I think has had more than 100 million views, with Putin makes mockery of the charges that they will make against us as working against working for Russia, and somehow under the direction of Russia sowing discord within this country. In fact, discord exists here. That's why there's even an NAACP. That's why there's a push. That's why it's SCLC. We didn't create the discord. We were born into it and fighting against what's happening to us. And then Glenn Greenwald, who is himself a constitutional attorney with a massive kind of social media presence, did a show with us where within a matter of a week or so, something like 500,000 people had seen that show, and almost every one of them was sympathetic. And he was opposed to this assault that's on free speech, that's using the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement as the means through which this assault was being made. So I just think that's really important. And I want to remind people, and by the way, much of the work that we do now started where you are located right now. And that is to say in Atlanta, Georgia. And I worked in Vine City. And I worked with Julian Bond, and we were, who was located at one time at 360 Nelson Street there in the SNCC headquarters. I worked, I had a relationship in Atlanta, though he wasn't based there, with Dick Gregory. I worked with a host of folks who were there. Ethel Minor, who was a magnificent leader in SNCC at that time, who was really one of our sponsors in that organization. Dorothy Cotton, who worked out of the SCLC office there. I worked with these people. This is where much of the history, the movement, the development toward the struggle against colonialism had some of its earliest manifestations inside this country. And the problem, of course, is that the U.S. government made this attack on what they call black nationalist hate groups. And they were determined that the struggle for black people, independence, political self-determination was not something that they would tolerate. That as long as we talked in some non-meaningful way about joining America, that was an element of tolerance that they could handle. But at the moment we start talking about self-determination, we start talking about African people just fighting for happiness and return of resources, material wealth that's been stolen from us for a long period of time. At the moment we start talking about the total liberation and unification of Africa and African people, now we had broken the boundaries of what they had determined through murder, through Malcolm's assassination, King's assassination, the attack on the Black Panther Party. We had gone beyond the boundaries that they found acceptable, and that's part of what allowed them to attack us. So people should go to Hands Off Uhuru. That's UHURU, handsoffuhuru.org, and you can get most of the information we're talking about. And I would also say, Brother Robert, that we want people to read the document, read the indictment that they made against us, read the motion to dismiss these charges that came from our lawyers, read the position that came from the magistrate that united with the prosecution, and read our response to that. We want everybody to see it, and if you see it, then you'll see how ridiculous and how contrived this entire charge is against us. And you also hopefully will be reminded that this is means that they've used to assault the Black liberation movement historically. They got rid of Marcus Garvey. That way they attacked and actually jailed and charged and tried W.E.B. Du Bois for the very same thing that they're charging us with. And Paul Robeson going before the House Un-American Activities. I think there's enough history here for anybody to see that this is part of a continuum to make sure that African people made no meaningful movements towards self-determination and would isolate us in the rest of the world, so no other people or no other place around the world would be able to sympathize with our requirement, our need to be able to feed, clothe, and house ourselves, and to have self-determination, and to say that the United States government is guilty of genocide against black people according to the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide. And the United States government and America owes African people reparations, and we're going to win those things, and we're going to win this case because the trial has already begun. They want to restrict this trial to simply and purely legal terms. We will win it on legal terms because in terms of the First Amendment, we find ourselves in a very awkward and ridiculous position of having to fight and defend the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution against the United States government itself. We're going to win on that in the courts. But in the meantime, we recognize the trial has already begun and that this was not a case based on law and legalism. It was a political trial, and we're going to win it politically among masses of people throughout this country and around the world.
Now, on that point, Grandmaster Jay from the NFAC was sentenced, I think, to 7 years in prison in 2022 for advocating for African American, for African American gun rights. In the case that you're facing, can you talk about exactly what the charges are against you and what you want the community to do to help bring a spotlight to this? What do you want black lawyers to do if they can sign on and put in amicus briefs or join the legal team?
Oh, man,
give us some marching orders on this.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, the case that the government used against us is the statute of criminalizing what they characterize as unregistered foreign agents, and that's 18 U.S.C. 951. So it's the first time in its history that it's ever been used to target political or speech. It's never been used to target speech before in the history. And this was something that was initiated around 1917, shortly after the Russian Revolution. It's a thing that makes a suggestion that people, it's almost like we're spies or agents for Russia, et cetera. So that's a really important point. And they also charged us, in addition with the violation of this U.S.C. 951, they charged us with conspiring with the Russians. So there's a total of 15 years that we could be sentenced to if convicted on what it is that they're talking about. So I think it's really important for everybody to understand that there's case law, and you can see the case law that we use, and people should go to handsoffwahooda.org and get all of that. And yes, we do need lawyers, and there are 5 different lawyers now who are connected to this process because they see the threat that this has to free speech for everybody. And there are some people who may be dumb enough, and I'm mostly, like they make the assumption that there are enough white people like in the 1960s who were fearful enough of black people and fearful enough of Russians that they can say Russia, 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 and black militants, et cetera, that they could win the popular support of white people to carry this out. But what we're saying is that this is a dagger pointed at the heart of the whole free speech for everybody, and they would utilize an attack on people who they would assume would not have much support in the general population among white people to make this assault. And when they do that, they open the door for a First Amendment attack on everybody, because this is not my First Amendment right. I didn't write the Constitution. I didn't write the First Amendment. This is not the Uhuru movement. This is not black people's First Amendment right. It's everybody's. And so at the moment, at the point that they can succeed in this, they've succeeded in criminalizing speech for everybody in this country. So it's an issue of conspiracy that they're talking about with the Russians to do this stuff, and it's an issue of fighting, working for the Russians as Russian agents to work for black people and black power. So we don't have agency as black people. Somebody has to tell us that we are oppressed and tell us how that we have to get freedom, and that's the assumption that a lot of this is based on. So and again, the case law is here. I'm really inviting lawyers. We need people to join this legal team. Yes, we're going to need amicus briefs that would support this struggle. We've got an extraordinary camp of lawyers now. We're raising, we need at least a minimum of $250,000. We've raised a tremendous amount of money now, and we're still in the process of raising money for the first stage of this case. There are other things that's going to have to do with, we're going to need things like people who expert witnesses who can speak to some of the questions that's contained in this indictment, that's history, law, etc. So yes, people should come on and go to handsoffuhuru.org, and that would give you an opportunity to sign on. And to sign on to the ability to a quick response to how we move now. There has not been there's been a declaration right now penciled in the September 3rd trial date, but as I mentioned earlier, that there has been an appeal to the determination that came from the magistrate, an appeal that's going to the district court, and we believe that we can push them back. We believe that if enough people, our listeners and supporters out there who believe in free speech, whether they believe in the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru Movement, or African internationalism or not, we believe that there are enough people who believe in the question of free speech and recognizing that they are under attack. That if you take action, if you come to handsoffuhuru.org, if you notify your senators and congresspersons and things like that about what a shameful thing that it is they're doing, we can push them back, and we can influence the court to follow the law. And that's effectively what we're doing. We're not trying to make Biden or the court African internationalists or Pan-Africanists or revolutionaries. We just say follow the law. Follow the law that's spelled out in your Constitution, in your First Amendment rights, et cetera. So that's what we will call for people to do. And all of this information, again, with case law, because we want you to know the case law. We want you to see the briefs that's been filed. First of all, the indictment, our response to the indictment, the state's response to that, the magistrate's response to what the state has said, and then our response to this that objects to how the magistrate's position has come forward. We say even the indictment itself is an assault on free speech. So this is a legal aspect of the case. That's notwithstanding what we recognize to be the political questions associated with the attack historically on black people who are fighting to be free.
Absolutely. All right, so a couple things that we're going to do here from marching orders. One, I want to join the legal team. So I want you to have your people reach out to me. I want to write an amicus brief on this, primarily because I've worked on First Amendment issues for over 20 years in civil rights cases, including the Stand Your Ground law here in Georgia, the voter suppression laws here in Georgia, and the Foreign Agents Act has very specific statutory requirements that you absolutely did not meet. So I want to meet with your legal team, with myself and some civil rights lawyers I've worked with before, so we can kind of beef up these briefs and have at least a half dozen to a dozen organizations put in amicus briefs on your behalf before it goes to federal courts. Now, when are the dates on this? When's the next court date on this? When are the next date when briefs are due?
The court date that has been established was September 3rd. We had a date
we have some time.
Last Friday that we had time to file an appeal to the determination by the magistrate that united more or less with the determination, with the decision that had with the prosecutor. And so we filed on the last day was Friday. We filed a response to that and an opposition that please take a look at that. That's also on handsoffuhuru.org. Please take a look at that. I'm sorry.
On that point, you're going to need a lot more than $250,000 for this case. So where can people donate at? Where can people help with the fundraising efforts? Because I'll tell you right now, I've done cases in Fulton County Superior Court that cost $250,000. So you're going to need up into the 6-7 figures. You're going to need over $1 million. So where can people donate at? Where can people find more information on sending money to the organization?
Please go again to handsoffuhuru.org, and when you get there, you'll see a donate button. Go there because there's an entity that we utilize to receive the money, so that it doesn't come to us. It goes to this entity. Keep everything above board and legal. So handsoffuhuru, UHURU.org.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Yeshitela. We'll be reaching out to your legal team and bringing some more lawyers on board with us to make sure we can get this the full attention, the full fight around this that's necessary. I'm going to be reaching out also to some more media resources so we can get your story out there in front of the most people in this community as possible. Because as you said, Hunter Biden right now is charged under the same statute as you.
Right.
We've seen many groups on the right be charged, including January 6th protesters
Right.
for their free speech issues. So this
Right.
is a large issue currently. And given the current political nature of the administration, I think that this is where the rallying cry has to be. Because as we said, if they are able to stop this movement for reparations, that means they'll be able to stop any movement for reparations. And just as Nina Simone said in Mississippi, goddamn, she said
Yeah.
they say it's just a communist plot. They've been using this since J. Edgar Hoover to try to destroy black movements, to claim that they are working with the Russians, they're working with the Soviets, they're working with the communists. This is right out of that same COINTELPRO playbook that has existed in the American government for the last 75 years, and it stops with this generation. And I'll be damned if I see this happen, and I'll put my brief in there somewhere also. So we're going to stay in contact, be back on the show, and we're going to keep this fight going. Thank you so much, Dr. Omali Yeshitela, the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru Movement. Go to the uhurumovement.org. For more information and to make donations to help this legal defense fight going forward. We're going to take your phone calls after this. Calling 404-726-1380, News and Talk 1380 WAOK.